Welcome into Sideline Signal. I am Andrew, joined as always by Tyler. How you doing today?
I am great. Big weekend of college football as well as NFL. Can't wait to discuss it all.
Yep, and it is Thursday afternoon, so going into the weekend, we are going to preview some of our favorite college football games of the week, some of our favorite NFL games of the week, as well as our favorite bets of the week. So to get started, Tyler, what is your top two college football games of the week?
So there wasn't really much to choose from. Andrew had just enlightened me before we got on the show that everyone that changed conferences is playing the rival, and there's not really many other games besides that. But we do manage to get a great game coming up here. Number 20, Arizona is traveling to Manhattan to face number 14, Kansas State. It is an absolute travesty that this game's on Friday night. It should have been the game day game, in my opinion. And game day is coming to watch LSU for some reason, but it should have been this game. This game also weirdly does not count towards the standings in the Big 12 because it was scheduled beforehand. So that just shows you yet another reason why conference realignment sucks. I am fully against it. I have been the whole time. I don't like it, but Noah Favita versus Avery Johnson, that is the quarterback matchup. It could be a lot of points in Manhattan, and it's going to be exciting. It's going to be one of those games, in my opinion, that it's going to be whichever team has the ball last wins. I could see this game going over 100 points, honestly, where both teams score 50. But part of me really thinks that because it's supposed to be so many points and the over is super high and what have you, that this is going to be a grinded out type of game in like the 20s. But I still think it's going to be close. We get to see possibly a preview of the Big 12 championship game here. And this new look Big 12, there's a lot of contenders. So this will be big, even though it doesn't count towards the standings, because it kind of it's like a feeling out process if they were to meet again in the championship game or something like that. So a lot of star power. Like I said, the quarterback matchup is going to be awesome, and we get to watch two explosive offenses really get to work here. For my second game, I'm going to put number 12 Utah on upset alert. They are traveling to Utah State. It's Saturday at 4:30 Eastern time. Hear me out. Utah is a much better team. I'm not denying that, but it may have evened the playing field. Cam Rising is not determined to play. He's questionable right now. He has that hand injury. They didn't look very good as soon as he went out of the game versus Baylor. If they didn't score all those points already, they probably would have lost. To be completely honest, it didn't look like the same offense. It did not move smoothly, in my opinion. And Utah State is getting back Spencer Petras. Yes, that Spencer Petras from the Iowa Hawkeyes. He missed all of last year, giving Caden McNamara the starting job there. So he transfers to Utah State, sprained his ankle in week 0, I believe, or week 1. He'll be back now. And I really think that gives them the advantage. They have an experienced quarterback, experience against big teams playing. It's going to be a home game. It's going to be a sellout. If Cam Rising does not play, I could see Utah State making this a very close game, and it's a big rivalry anyway. This for Utah State, unless they were to go undefeated and somehow make the playoff, this is their Super Bowl. This is their chance to ruin Utah's season. Because you think about it, a one-loss team, unless you win the Big 12, is probably not making it, as we talked about on our last episode. So this is a huge game for the Utes, and the Aggies have something to say about it. Kind of disrupted there. But if Rising plays, I expect that this game will be further apart than I originally perceived it with him out. But two great games, like I said, Arizona and K-State, and then Utah and Utah State. What do you got for the games that you're looking forward to in week 3 of college football?
Yeah, and actually, before we transition to mine, I had a question. Do you think, obviously, these are two big matchups out of the Big 12. Do you think this is kind of a statement week for the Big 12 with these two top matchups and obviously you highlighting a potential upset? Do you think this could be a big rise or a big fall for this conference if teams don't look great?
Yes, I really do because I think that if Arizona and K-State, if it's not a good game, if it's like a slugfest, then this is probably going to be Utah's conference or Oklahoma State's conference. I need to see these teams both play well, especially with how much the Big Ten and SEC is above this conference already. Like the Big 12 is there. They're still a power conference, but they got to prove to me that they are going to be able to compete. Obviously, they're playing two teams in the Big 12 for Arizona and K-State. But for Utah, they've looked great offensively. When, like I said, when Cam Rising is in the game, they've looked great. Are they going to be able to win without him? That is my question. And if they're able to put a dominant showing on the road versus a Utah State club, like I said, that is playing for it all, going to go 100%. It's a rivalry game. If they are to do that, that would really impress me. And I think they do have the best chance of the teams to make the playoff if there wasn't going to, like, if they didn't win the Big 12, let's just say, and they had one loss, I think Utah would have the best chance to make it out of any of these teams. But a dominant showing would prove a lot and go a long way for me in my mind. So yes, I agree. Like I think that this is a huge weekend for the Big 12, even though there's not a lot of games to be played.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting because these games are statement games when you look towards the end of the season, when you're looking at resumes. K-State, who has struggled, they almost lost to Tulane last week. They could really use a big win against Arizona for their resume if they don't win the Big 12, trying to be one of those next best teams that get in. So I think it's going to be really fun to watch the Big 12 this week. That's a game tomorrow night that I'm excited to watch. So hopefully, I don't really care who wins personally, but it's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah,
Moving on
definitely.
to my two games of the week for college football, I also stuck with the Big 12. I went with Texas Tech versus North Texas. Um, a couple good storylines here. Texas Tech is bouncing off a loss last week to Washington State. So I really kind of want to see how they improve because they're going to start getting into their Big 12 schedule. It's kind of open this year, obviously, with Texas and Oklahoma leaving for the SEC. So I want to see how they improve after a loss last week to another team that was a Power Five team that now is playing a Mountain West schedule in Washington State. And to me, the biggest thing I want to look at is North Texas. I highlighted it a little bit in the TikTok I made about the group of five schools, but North Texas has looked really, really impressive throwing the ball to start the season. They've had two strong games. They're 2-0 right now. And I want to see how they handle a matchup against a Power Five team. Chandler Morris, right now, the quarterback for North Texas, he's second in passing yards in college football. He's thrown for 757 passing yards in two games, and he has seven total touchdowns so far. So I really want to see how a Big 12 defense is able to handle that air raid style of play. And I think it's going to be really fun to watch. I think it'll be high scoring. And, if North Texas is able to pull off the upset and beat Texas Tech, it's a great, win for the resume trying to be a group of five school. Moving on, I have a brand new SEC school as my second game of the week. It's number 15, Oklahoma versus Tulane. And obviously, I kind of talked about it a little bit with the Big 12 with K-State versus Tulane at Tulane last week. It was a heartbreaking loss for Tulane, a pick right at the end in the end zone for them to lose by a touchdown. But this could be another team, like you said, with Utah. I have Oklahoma on upset watch. And yes, the game is in Norman, so they're going to be at home. But Oklahoma really struggled last week against Houston. It was a 16-12 win. They couldn't really move the ball at all. So I want to see how Tulane's able to do on the road because it was a similar fixture last week. K-State was, I think, 15 when they played. Obviously, they were at home. Now they're going to be on the road. But Tulane's another team that has plenty of these top 25 matchups in their non-conference schedule. So looking at, potential group of five schools, it's another highlighted team for me that if they're able to go on the road at Norman and win, this could be massive for their resumes. And I really want to see how this new SEC team will handle, the pressure of a game like this after struggling the week before and then now going and playing Tennessee next week. So it's a lot of pressure on a team that's on, spoiler alert potentially, and then going and playing another top 10 matchup against Tennessee next week. So I think it's really going to be interesting to see how they handle that moving forward. But yeah, those are my two games: Texas Tech versus North Texas and Tulane versus Oklahoma.
How many rushing attempts do you think are going to be in that Texas Tech North Texas game? Since they're both air raid, they both love to throw the ball around the yard.
Yeah, not a lot. I could see both teams maybe getting 10 to 15 in, if
Yeah.
that, but both quarterbacks are probably going to throw for 45 passes in the game. I'm an air raid lover. I was always a fan of Mike Leach, rest in peace. So I'm really, looking forward to that matchup because I love seeing the ball thrown around. But yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah.
probably going to be like zero rushing attempts.
Yeah. With that's a kind of game where you could see like one of those games like throwback Mahomes Baker Mayfield game where it's like 1,000 yards total. But obviously we'll have to see if North Texas can withstand that power conference defense that Texas Tech has, and Texas Tech needs to win this game because last week it was embarrassing for them. Washington State blew the doors off of them. So we'll have to see. And then that Oklahoma matchup, if Oklahoma loses this game, Sooners fans, it is going to be a rough year. They got a rough schedule ahead. Tennessee looks amazing. I talked about that in our last episode. This is a must-win game, and Tulane, like you said, could be one of those teams that gets in that group of five playoff spot. So definitely two great picks. There's a lot of good games, even though there's not many games this weekend. So I'm sure both of us, our eyes will be glued to the TV as every weekend with football on there. So moving on to the big show, the NFL games of the week here. What are your two games that you're looking forward to in NFL week two?
Yeah, and for reference for our listeners, we're recording it right before the Thursday night game. Our schedules just didn't line up, so we won't be covering the Thursday night game, although that is honestly one of the games of the week between Miami and Buffalo. But my first game of the week is between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Detroit Lions. And this is a battle of two teams that looked really impressive week one. Baker Mayfield really dismantled that Washington Commanders defense under Dan Quinn, and Mike Evans looked phenomenal in their game. So he's a player that I'm highlighting for this matchup. I want to see how he's able to do against this tougher secondary. How's Baker Mayfield going to perform under pressure? Obviously, Detroit has a really good D line, so he's going to be under pressure more. It's going to fall a lot on that Buccaneers offensive line. But it's really, to me, I'm highlighting this game because I get to make an impression for both of these teams. They both look good, but this is obviously a tougher matchup early in the season. So we get to really see what they're handling and how they're going to handle the pressure and the stress once it gets later in the game. Two potential playoff teams down the road. So I think it's going to be a great game. I think the Lions are slightly better in my eyes. I think they'll kind of edge away maybe by 10 points, but I definitely think it's going to be a great game from start to finish. And then my second game of the week is another storyline I want to highlight. It's the Colts versus the Packers. And to be honest, even though the Colts lost week one, they looked at times very impressive. When Anthony Richardson was able to get the ball moving downfield, he was unstoppable. I mean, his short to mid range was still a little disappointing. I want to see more out of that. But when he was able to get the deep ball going, the Texans were not able to stop it. So although they lost by two, I think they're definitely a team that could be competitive. And the Packers have a lot of question marks around them now, obviously, with Jordan Love going down for a few weeks with a knee injury that he suffered in Sao Paulo. So we get to see this offense that's really young and full of stars, but Malik Willis is coming in. He hasn't had the best career so far, obviously, in his time with Tennessee, and then now he's going to get the starting role for the Packers. So I want to see what he's able to do, how he's able to kind of put his past behind him, and if he's able to perform. A guy last year who came in with no expectations and played really well was Josh Dobbs. I don't think anybody assumed for the first few weeks of Josh Dobbs starting that he was going to perform. And I think Willis has a great cast around him on offense. He can hand it off to Jacobs, who's a veteran back. He's got three great young talents at receiver. Jaden Reed had a hell of a game last week. Obviously, he sat on my dynasty league bench and cost me this week, but I think he could have another big week as long as Malik Willis can get the ball to him. And so that's the biggest thing for me is how Malik's going to perform. I think the Colts will take it because I don't know if he'll perform all that well, but I really want to see some confidence out of him. And I think those are two teams, again, borderline playoff team out of Indianapolis, and with Jordan Love healthy, definitely a playoff contender out of Green Bay. So I want to see how both teams perform this week. But those are my two big games just for the storylines. It's not necessarily run and gun, going to be high scoring, but definitely get to see and learn a lot about these four teams. What about you, though? What were your two NFL games of the week?
So I got two matchups of teams that all four of these teams played really well. My first matchup is going to be the San Francisco 49ers traveling to Minneapolis to go play the Minnesota Vikings at 1 o'clock Eastern. I want to see if the Vikings are legit. Just simply put, they basically got a bye week, week one, playing my Giants. It was a bye week for them. It was super easy. Sam Darnold didn't have an incompletion until midway through the third quarter, which is just embarrassing for my team, but great for the Vikings. They looked good. They looked put together, and there's no better test of how good a team is than playing the 49ers right now, in my opinion. Like I said, I've been gushing over them for the last episode, and now I'm going to do it again, but they're loaded. They don't really even need Christian McCaffrey right now, which scares me because I drafted him number one overall in about two of my leagues and have him in a dynasty league that Andrew and I are a part of. So to hear that, okay, we don't really need him, that is the scariest thing I could hear, but it's true. Jordan Mason carried the load, looked amazing behind that offensive line. So I want to see if the Vikings are legit. I want to see if Sam Darnold's going to see ghosts or is he going to see touchdown passes? And I want to see how they're going to handle Justin Jefferson on the 49ers defensively. Um, does he explode for one? He didn't have a huge game. He did catch a touchdown against the Giants, but I want to see if he's going to earn that contract money. Obviously, I think he's going to go down as one of the greats when his career is said and done, but it starts here. You got the money. Now prove that you're worth that money. And that's going to start right here. And I really want to see how the Vikings stand up against the Niners offensively and defensively, as I said. So this is a good test for them early in the year to see what they have. As you said, like what did these teams got? That's what week 2, week 3, week 4 is kind of about is finding your identity for the season, competing, but also figuring it out. Because these guys, many of the starters didn't play really much or at all in the preseason. So this is kind of where you put it together early in the season. So Vikings Niners for my first selection. My second game is going to be really interesting. The Saints traveling to Dallas to play the Cowboys. Now, the Saints may have just played the Panthers, kind of same as the Vikings. Got basically a bye week. They were up 30 to nothing or 30, yeah, 30 to nothing at halftime. Ended up winning that game 47 to 10, which really wasn't close. And then the Cowboys went on the road to Cleveland and absolutely embarrassed them, as the Cowboys do. So if the Saints pull this game out in AT&T Stadium, I'm sold on them. I think they will contend for that division. There'll be a wild card or something like that. I know it's super early, but this is a big game for them. This is a game that they got to win if they're going to make the playoffs. Uh, the Cowboys tend to be a juggernaut when the game isn't about winning a ring or advancing around. So this is going to be awesome to see. I want to see if Derek Carr can sustain the track that he's on right now with that great game starting off, and I want to see what that Saints defense does against this high flying Dallas Cowboys offense. So those are really my two games right here. It's a prove it game for one team on one side of it, and on the other, can you continue that excellence that you've had in the regular season in the Cowboys and the 49ers, and then the two teams that got to prove it, as I just said, Vikings and the Saints. So those are my two games. Can these teams compete against the top rung of teams in the NFL? So a lot of great matchups. I'm personally not looking forward to the Giants game this week, but they do tend to beat the Commanders a lot. So I will be watching, even though I told myself I wasn't going to, but I will be watching. But great slate. Any comments before we move on about the NFL slate this week?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Dallas versus the Saints was one of the games that I almost highlighted for mine. Kind of like you, I'm not looking forward to our week 2 matchup as a Raiders fan. We're going to Baltimore, so I've already chalked that down as a loss. I don't see the offense moving against Baltimore's defense, and I think Lamar Jackson is going to dismantle our defense. It's going to happen as long as Max Crosby doesn't get to him, which could be a possibility, but overall. I think Baltimore will bounce back from their loss to the Chiefs. And there's a good slate of games. Definitely some interesting storylines. We're in the weeks of overreactions and proving your worth. So it's going to be really, really fun to watch week 2. Again, I wish we could kind of cover some of the Thursday night game, but we won't get it out before, kickoff. So it's not like it's going to matter. We'll get to have our overreactions or just reactions next week. But moving on, our final segment, our bets of the week. Last week I had a great week. My parlay didn't hit, but I went 3 for 4 on my locks of the week. Tyler, not the best week out of you going 1 for 4, but it's a new week. I'm currently in the lead. It's time for you to bounce back. What are your 4 locks of the week?
I also just want to say the Ravens would have covered if Isaiah's likely's toe was in. It was going to come down to a field goal, like I said, which upset me greatly. But new week, 1-3. I got nothing to lose. I'm gonna go all out here with my picks that I feel really good about. My first one, I'm gonna take the Los Angeles Chargers -5.5 against the Carolina Panthers. They're sitting right now -115 odds for the spread, but week 1 was rough for the Panthers, like I just mentioned with the Saints there. They're going to be in for a really bad season. It seems pretty obvious that they're going to be vying for a top 3 pick this year. It just matters which one it is, 1, 2, or 3. The Chargers showed me enough to make me want to take them at this line. I feel like they'll win this game by a touchdown or more. J.K. Dobbins was an absolute monster last week. I'm sorry, but he was, just simply put. And then Justin Herbert's going to settle in. That offense, even without many weapons on the outside, I think will be fine. Jim Harbaugh clearly has gotten them to buy in on the run game, the blocking scheme. It looked great. Joe Alt looked amazing against Max Crosby, as we talked about in our last episode. And we'll see if they can do that. The Panthers, they got to prove to me that they belong in the NFL right now because honestly, like I don't know, if there was relegation, they would be in a lot of trouble. But for the Panthers, they got to show me something. I'm taking Herbie and the Chargers -5.5. I really don't think this game will be close. And that's really the one that I was most confident on. Moving on to college football, Andrew highlighted this game a little bit, but I'm taking Tulane in the points right here. I really love this. At a line 13.5, they're -110. I think that the spread was too wide, to be honest. I feel like it should have been like 9 or 7 even. But they head into Norman off a very good game, as Andrew said, lost on an interception driving in to score the touchdown that would have tied the game, that interception in the end zone. The Sooners look very lackluster, only 249 yards of offense against a Houston team that had just lost to UNLV, who's going to be a good team, yes, but you got to do better than that in the bottom feeders of your old conference, especially when you move to a conference like the SEC. So will Jackson Arnold be able to bounce back and kind of show everyone that he's that quarterback that we expect him to be? Darian Mensah has looked great. The running back Makai Hughes has looked also awesome, and that high flying offense, I think, will be able to compete. I love it. I think they'll lose by maybe a touchdown or even win outright. So I really like this here at 13.5. It could be high scoring, but if it's not, I really think Tulane's going to score a bulk of the points, and I would even take this not even being that close. If Oklahoma comes out the way that they did last week, I expect them to be better. But still, I love this Tulane team right now. And I do think that at the end of the year, we're going to be talking about this game specifically when they went to Norman at the end of the year, whether they kept it close or not, or even won the game there. So those are my two game picks. So I'm taking Tulane +13.5 and the Chargers -5. On to the two touchdown scores. I really bit myself in the foot last week. I bet the house on this guy to score last week, and he did, but I was too scared to mention it because I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to look like a fool, and I ended up doing that anyway. So I'm going to take Xavier Worthy anytime touchdown at +155. They clearly want to get him the ball. I feel like that was obvious in their week one. He only had 2 catches, but they were for 47 yards and a touchdown. He had one carry on an end around for 21 yards and a touchdown. So they want to get him the ball. He looks like a young Tyreek Hill. I'm not saying he's going to be that for their offense, but Mahomes loves small guys that can run. And he is that. He fits that build well. Even though Hollywood Brown is coming back, that means to me that the Bengals are going to put their third best corner on him because you got Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown now. And I don't know if you saw it, but Taylor Britt on the Bengals just said some things about Xavier Worthy, not just 30 minutes before we started recording, said that the only thing that he can do is run straight. And if I'm Xavier Worthy, I am going to shove those words right back into his mouth. I think Mahomes might feed him because of that. And they're facing a team in the Bengals that needs this game, even though it's so early. They need it for their own confidence. You can't start the year 0-2 with aspirations of winning that division. So this is a game where I think Xavier Worthy scores, maybe not the focal point of the offense, but still gets in the end zone. And I think he proves the Bengals defense wrong there. For my second touchdown pick, I'm going to go with Jameson Williams, to score a +160. It's very clear that there might be a 1A and a 1B on this Lions team with Amon-Ra and him. He had 5 catches for 121 yards and a 52-yard touchdown in the Sunday night overtime win versus the Rams. But I think this offense is going to be dynamic with the running game and the passing. I think the play action with Jared Goff is something that he's always been good at. It is going to open it up for Jameson Williams over the top. I think Amon-Ra gets most of the targets medium range, but most deep routes are going to be going to Jameson Williams. So for that reason, I like it against this Bucs defense. The Bucs defense is good. I'm not saying they're bad, but I really do think that Jameson Williams scores again and has a huge season for the Lions this year. So I'm taking JMO and Xavier Worthy for my touchdown scores. We got our champion of the first week of bets right here with his 4 locks. So listen carefully to what Andrew's got to say here. No pressure, by the way. No.
Yeah, and I was pretty disappointed last week. I didn't go 4 for 4. Again, I didn't anticipate the Bengals struggling as much as they did, and obviously Andre Yoshivas was unable to score. But yeah, I'm pretty confident going into this week. I like my 4 picks. Starting off with college football, I'm going to the Apple Cup between Washington and Washington State, and I have Washington money line. It is currently minus 188 when I took it. And looking at the Apple Cup in the last 5 years, Washington is 4-1 when they've played each other. And all time, they're 76 and 33 and 6 ties, but that's way back when they first started, so I'm not going to count that. But they're 76 and 33 all time, 4-1 in the last 5 years. It's going to be a really competitive game, but when you look at kind of the hierarchy right now, Washington's a better football team, and I think they'll go out and they'll prove it again. And I have them as a lock for this week. Moving to my NFL lock, I really like Jets money line minus 188 against the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, they lost to a very powerful and very competitive San Francisco 49ers team last week. But going and playing the Tennessee Titans is going to be a complete change of pace. I think this will be a bounce back game for them. I think Rodgers will kind of prove why he's going to be an elite quarterback still this season. And I think the defense is going to have a field day. Obviously, it was a special teams and a defensive touchdown for the Bears last week to go and beat Tennessee. I don't think Will Levis is going to play with a lot of confidence, and I think it'll be a domination by the Jets. Moving to my 2 touchdown scores. The first one, I have Cooper Kupp anytime touchdown. It's currently minus 110, so it's pretty likely it'll happen. And when you look at the Rams' performance against the Lions last week, Cooper Kupp was a production monster. He had
Yeah.
the surplus of the target share in that offense. Obviously, Kyren Williams had some good touches. He could potentially be another guy to score a touchdown. But the way I see it is the Rams just lost Puka Nacua for at least the next 4 to 6 weeks. I saw a report that it could be a long-term injury for them this week. And in that offense that has a lot of power going forward, you got to rely on your big time player. Cooper Kupp is going to be the production monster that he always is. I could see him getting anywhere from like 7 to 12 catches this week, put up a big stat line. And I think ultimately, if they get down inside the red zone, it's first and goal from like the 10. You could hit him on a slant and anything like that. I think he'll be a lock for a touchdown. And then I also went with a Kansas City player for my second touchdown scorer. I went with Isaiah Pacheco to score anytime. And the reason say that is last week, the Bengals could not stop New England's run game. Ramondre Stevenson had a day against the Bengals. And I don't know if they're going to be able to do it against Kansas City, if they're going to be able to stop the run. Isaiah Pacheco is an angry runner. He's able to break off physical runs. He's able to break off long runs with his speed. And I'm not convinced after the Ramondre Stevenson performance that the Bengals are going to be able to stop him. They could easily get to a first and goal from like the 3 and in. And if they get there, it's almost guaranteed Pacheco will score. He loves those short range touchdowns. I could see it early in the game or late in the game, depending on how it's going. But yeah, to recap, University of Washington money line, Jets money line, Cooper Kupp anytime touchdown, and Isaiah Pacheco anytime touchdown are my 4 locks of the week.
And hopefully we both go 4 for 4, and then we can come and sit here next week and brag about it. I don't know if you saw this. I wanted to bring this up,
Yeah.
completely unrelated, but you talked about the Jets. Um, I saw a video today from a radio show, and they blind ranked Aaron Rodgers' performance against the 49ers versus another quarterback's week 1 performance for the Jets. I bet you can guess who. He had nearly identically the same stat line as Zach Wilson did against the Bills on that Monday night, um, which is pretty crazy. It's also concerning for if I was a Jets fan, I wouldn't want to hear that. Obviously, it's way too early to say anything about that, but I just thought that was funny that how everyone was shitting on Zach Wilson for just being bad. Yet Aaron Rodgers has the same stat line, and Aaron Rodgers is like, holy crap, we got a quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is here, that kind of thing. So, you know, what are your thoughts on that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of disagree with the sentiment behind it because you know what you're getting with Aaron Rodgers, and I think I can understand and appreciate the idea of having similar stat lines, but the mentality whenever Zach Wilson went in, I think he was unfairly thrown into the Jet system. He was never set up for success. Coming in as a rookie, he didn't have anybody around him. And, they gradually got better through his time and he didn't. But I don't really think that there was ever a time where Zach Wilson had a chance to flourish. And by the time he went in last year with Rodgers going down, you could tell he had no confidence. He didn't really have the team behind him. So, yeah, looking at Rodgers, I'm nowhere near concerned with his stat line. Obviously, right now, San Francisco arguably has the best defense in the NFL right now. And, it was a relatively competitive game. So I'm not jumping on any worry train yet. There's no panic out of me with the Jets. Now, we'll see down the next few weeks if they continue to struggle. There might be a change in my opinion, but I'm not rushing to any concern with Aaron Rodgers yet. I thought the fact that he's coming off with his age, coming off the Achilles injury, he still looked really good throwing the ball. He wasn't afraid to throw it down the middle against Fred Warner. So he's still confident. So that's all I'm concerned about.
And they have a perfect setup. I don't know if you guys realize this, but in terms of our sports media careers, Andrew and I have both been on the Will Levis hate train since he came out. So in that kind of sentiment, we're not Titans fans. Just put it that way plainly, if you couldn't tell by each of our predictions for them. So the Jets are set up pretty well, but L'Jarius Sneed might have something to say about that, probably following Garrett Wilson that entire game. Be a good matchup, but like you said, the Jets are going to win. That's what we got there. So I mean, hopefully it does come out and we can sit back here both with winning records. I got some catching up to do. So I don't blame you if you guys don't take my picks here, but I will prove you wrong and I will get it and I will do it and I'll get them right.
Yeah,
So
so it's going to be a fun week. Hopefully, you guys ride with us. Hopefully, we're right. We'll, check back in next week when we do our week 3 predictions. But other than that, this has been another episode of the Sideline Signal NFL podcast. I'm Andrew, as always, with my wonderful co-host Tyler. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment. We read our comments, we respond. Follow us on TikTok at Sideline Signal. And other than that, this has been another episode for us. Make sure to check in next week when we recap the college football and NFL weeks, and then we preview the week coming up. Other than that, that does it for us. So thank you all for listening.